Oh, okay, we have some people who are already here who've been waiting. So, yeah, everybody, good to see you all. I'm just gonna try move myself so the light here is not coming down on my. See, there's that light behind, but when it's like this, my head is blocking it. Of course, the other option is to turn that light off, but then it's gonna be a bit dark. So, you know what? I'm gonna turn it off. 1 second. Yeah, I think that's fine. So, how's it going, everyone? We got 3 people in the chat. Maybe some more will join now. So, yeah, where are you people? Come join our chat. I just came out with that video recently in Jerusalem, like you might have seen. Actually, the guy who was with me in the video was in another one of my videos in the past in Israel. If you guys can guess which one, then thumbs up to you. But he lives in Jerusalem, and he was telling me, you know, his feelings about living in Jerusalem because he moved there basically from somewhere else in Israel. And the thing is, you know, that video that I made, did you guys watch the video, whoever's here? Just waiting for some responses. Wait a second. Let me get into the live stream control system here that I have on my computer. Okay, we have 2 people here. Okay. Right, that's good. So, 1 second, one more thing. Okay, so here we are. So who watched the video from Jerusalem, and what did you think about it? Shalom from Canada. Idan says, YouTube has been bad recommending you to me. The last video was great. Yeah, well, part of it probably has to do with the fact that I haven't published a lot on YouTube recently. I mean, I basically went now a whole month without putting up a video, which is the longest period I ever had since I started YouTube of not putting up a video. I guess I just needed a break after 4 months of like really intense travel. So maybe that's part of the reason, you know, when you're not putting out any videos, then YouTube stops to recommend them. So that could have something to do with it. But I'm glad that you enjoyed the video. I felt like there were some stuff in the video that could have really been expanded on, but would have been a bit too much talk and kind of like would have ruined the flow of the video. And I wasn't always necessarily able to talk about those things sort of on the spot, so they got left out. I was with a friend there. He was kind of like my guide in Jerusalem. He drove me around and stuff. So I was like allowing him to express sort of his opinions about some of the stuff. But I felt like some of the sort of terminology that he used on some of the issues was a little bit problematic. And it just got me thinking in general about terminology in this conflict and how crucial it is, the words that you choose to use in order to describe certain things. So in this case, in the video, this thing came up literally in the very first, the very beginning of the video, where we're standing on a hilltop, me and my friend Ariel, and again, he was like, oh, I want to do a video. Hi, I'm from Hungary, someone says. Timia Velju, nice to meet you. And my friend, you know, he told me, look, let's do a video about Jerusalem, like East and West Jerusalem, Jews and Arabs, Jews and Muslims in Jerusalem, because I live there now and I'm like seeing this divide. So I want to show you like what I'm feeling. So I was like, okay, great. And he said, I have a couple ideas, places we can go that I want to show you. I was like, okay, you know, we talked about a couple stuff. And he said, look, there's a really nice viewpoint where you can see the separation barrier, you know, the wall. And you can see some of the Arab neighborhoods and some of the Jewish neighborhoods next to each other, and I think it would be really good. So I was like, okay, let's go. So we went there. We stood on that hill, as you might have seen in the video, and we're talking about Shuafat, which is, and you know, he immediately says this is the Shuafat refugee camp. So the people who live there, they are refugees, right? That's what he said in the video. I don't remember the exact term. He definitely used the word refugee camp. I don't remember if he used refugees, and like straight away. For me, that like is a problem. the way I see it. In general, the whole subject of refugees and the Israel-Palestine thing, it's a big thing. It's a big contested thing. But like I would just specifically say that I don't know if you saw the neighborhood in the video, and my friend was like, look, it's a pretty shitty neighborhood, look at it. And it's like, it's not a great neighborhood. It's true, if you look at it, it doesn't look like a nice neighborhood. It's crowded. The buildings are kind of like unpainted concrete and stuff like that, but not like something, in my travels, I've seen a lot worse, a lot worse, yeah? So, so he said, like, look, it's a refugee camp, and I kind of got into a bit of a discussion with him where I was like, well, it's not exactly a refugee camp. He's like, no, they're refugees. It's a refugee camp. And this is the thing, right? So if you have this place, Shafat, okay? It's a neighborhood that's in, quote, East Jerusalem, right? It's in the eastern part of Jerusalem, which we'll talk about as well. And I talked about it in the video, East versus West Jerusalem. That was under the control of Jordan, that had illegally annexed the eastern part of Jerusalem in the, turn around, I'm almost done, says Leo. Okay. The eastern part of the city was like illegally annexed by Jordan in the war in 1947 and 1948. They even kicked out like all the Jews that they had. They took complete control of the old city and all those stuff. And Shafat was in that area. Some of the refugees from that war, Arab refugees, who, fled the war or might have been kicked out during the war, whatever, the Jordanians housed some of them in that place called Shafat. So there's two things here going on straight away why there's a problem with calling this place a refugee camp. First of all, in the immediate aftermath of that happening, which was 80 years ago, yeah, those people would usually be called internally displaced people rather than refugees. An internally displaced person is a person who is displaced from inside his country. So, for example, now in Israel, there are people, for example, who live in northern Israel. They've been bombed by Hezbollah. Their house was destroyed, or they can't go back there because, their business got whatever. And they're now living somewhere else in Israel without a home, like in hotels and things like that. That's an internally displaced person. Okay, we have it here inside Israel as well. We also had it in the 48 war in Israel as well. A lot of people, they ran away from the fighting and they find themselves internally displaced, meaning they're in the same area. They haven't switched into like a new country technically, right? But they've lost their home and they're now living somewhere else. So for example, if you look at the people who were in Shafat, then they were in this territory, which was the British mandate, right? That was the British colonial territory that existed before Israel. And they ended up moving, right? Either they fled or expelled or whatever, or the fighting destroyed their homes, whatever it is, into that area, which became the state of Jordan, right? But it's in the same mandate area. And the Jordanian annexation of that area wasn't recognized internationally by anyone. So they weren't kicked out really into a new country. They're more like an internally displaced person. They're in the exact same area that they were before, only they've moved, right? Moved location slightly, like within the same area, not moved from country to country, not stateless necessarily, because some of them can have citizenship and whatnot. So that is what the situation was. I'm talking about like before 80 years ago, okay, 75 years ago. Now we're talking about a situation where it's not even those people anymore, right? It's their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who, they're born in a house, in a built-up house, like not in a tent or anything, and they live inside Jerusalem, where they have access to Israeli citizenship, some of them, if they want, most of them don't want, or what's called an Israeli ID, which we talked about, which is a lot of, when Israel annexed Jerusalem, then they gave people the option of getting an ID card, which basically gives you all the social rights and all the access to the healthcare and the universities and all the things in Israel, but you don't have a passport. And this was a way of giving people an option to be part of the society and get everything that they deserve, even if they themselves didn't want to be a part of Israel because they reject Israel. So they have a residency. They're born in a house. They're born in the same house that their parents were born or the same house that their grandparents were born. So in anywhere else around the world, if you had this situation, those people would not be called refugees. And the neighborhood would not be called a refugee camp. You know? Just look at the flip side of this if you look at it from the Israeli perspective. We have a bunch of people in Israel who fled from persecution in the Arab and Muslim world in the second half of the 20th century. We had people who came from Iraq and came from Syria and came from Egypt and came from Iran and came from all these places. And we put those people, bombardino crocodilo. Oh, I heard of that one before. So those people who came from those countries, who had to flee those countries because of the persecution, and they had all their property taken from them, right? This is the what's called the ethnic cleansing of the Mizrahi Sephardic Jews. When they came to Israel, they were put in what's called refugee camps. They were put in ma'abarot. Okay, and it looked like a refugee camp. It was tents, it was temporary structures, temporary, shacks and things like that, like a proper refugee camp. These people are refugees, and they, living in these camps that are like refugee camps. After a short period of time, those people, first of all, they got citizenship, right? So now you're already, once you're a citizen of a country, you're not supposed to be a refugee anymore. They got the citizenship. Those, run-down neighborhoods with this temporary structures, they start to build proper structures and everything that turned into proper neighborhoods. Those people have children. Those people have grandchildren, right? Those grandchildren are no longer refugees. They live in Israel now. Their grandparents were refugees, but they're not refugees, right? The descendants of refugees are not usually considered refugees, So the thing is, that's what I'm saying. So in this case, when you use that terminology of refugees, it has a huge impact and implication on what is going on, what the situation is on the ground, and what should happen, right? If these people are not refugees, as I believe, okay, because they're born there, they have a residency or passport, some of them, if they so desire, depending on what their desire is, and they live in a built-up neighborhood, and in the same neighborhood that their parents lived in or the grandparents lived in, and they have access to all the services. They're residents. They're not refugees anymore, all right? That's first of all, considering their current status. Secondly, if you're talking about what should happen, the whole story of the Palestinian refugees, as far as what should happen with the refugees, is that they need to move, right, back into the state of Israel, okay? They have their right of return, which supersedes the sovereign rights of the state of Israel. And that is the only solution to make them unrefugee them, right? To turn them from being refugees into non-refugees. And we see this in like a strange way, again, that just it contradicts what happens in every other conflict in the world. I'm not inventing things. Like, there are other conflicts, Like, I know when you're passionate about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I am as well, and a lot of people who view my videos are, that it looks like, you zoom into it like this and you look at the situation and you're only looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and there's all these things that are going on, and it just becomes like sort of a fact of life, something that is declared. But when you zoom out of the conflict and you look at other conflicts, then you see why some of these things that are talked about are strange, because they don't exist at all in any other conflict. And the Palestinian refugees is the biggest example of this, because, first of all, there is a UN refugee agency, all right, for all the refugees in the world, from all the conflicts in the world, called UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. It has millions of refugees from a gazillion different conflicts around the world, and that refugee agency, according to the United Nations mandate, says, okay, our goal is to make these people not be refugees anymore, right? They're refugees. Our goal as the UN is to make them not refugees. How do we make them not refugees? Well, there are three ways. Three ways you can make someone go from being a refugee to being not a refugee. One way is to take them and move them back to wherever they fled from or were expelled from, or whatever place they were before, which is basically, quote, return, right? That's one thing. One here, send me a contribution, thank you very much. That's one way, right? Return. The second way is citizenship. So if someone flees from point A to point B, and he's inside country B, and country B wants to give that person a citizenship, then he's now a citizen and he's no longer a refugee, right? And then there's a third way, which is called third-party relocation. So, someone flees from country A to country B, and then country C agrees to take that person and basically take them into their country. And that's something that we see a lot in the UN as well. So like countries like Australia, Sweden, strong European countries usually, they're willing to take a certain amount of refugees from various places around the world and relocate them to there. So those are the three ways that you turn from being a refugee to not being a refugee for every single refugee in the world, bar none, okay? Every single refugee, this applies, except the Palestinians. They're the exception. They're the only ones for whom this rule doesn't apply, meaning if you are a refugee from the 48 war, right? And Hamza Mahdi says, I'm pro non-Arab Palestinian supporter, but you are a good man respecting Palestinians oppressed. Okay, well, thank you. So I'm saying, someone now who's living in Jordan, right? And the Jordanians gave him a citizenship, okay? That person should be under the every standard of international law and refugeehood should no longer be a refugee. That person is a citizen of Jordan. He received a citizenship. He's a citizen, So that's the thing. But with the Palestinian case, no. So in the Palestinian case, that person, for example, who fled to Jordan and is now living in Jordan, he lives in a house, he could be a doctor, he could be, educated, he could have money, whatever it is, and he's a citizen, right? He has a passport, is still considered a refugee under the UN refugee agency that's specifically built for the Palestinians, which is UNRWA. That it's called. So there's one refugee agency for all the people in the world, and then there's another one just for the Palestinians. And it passes down indefinitely by generation. So every person now born to a refugee is himself a refugee forever until one solution is implemented. Like I said, usually there are 3 acceptable solutions. In this case, there's one solution, which is what's called return, which the Palestinians call the right of return. So they're saying that even if Israel is a sovereign country, which usually it should be able to control its borders, who comes in and out, if there is an Arab person, a Palestinian refugee, as it's called, living anywhere in the globe, like Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, even if he has a citizenship, he has the right to move into Israel and to claim some area where maybe his grandfather might have lived. That's what's called right of return. And that's like the most precious thing to the Palestinians, okay? So the idea of refugeehood and being a refugee and living in a refugee camp is like the most crucial thing in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It defines the conflict. And that's why it's such a crucial piece of terminology. And when I was there with my friend, and like he straight away says, look, Shafat, it's a refugee camp. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I classify that place as a refugee camp. Why is it a refugee camp? Are they, denied residency when they live there? Like, are they stateless people? Are they living in tents? Are they living in shacks? The place, are they themselves the refugee, or is it their parents and grandparents? And their parents and grandparents, when they fled, did they flee from like somewhere far away and were shoved into another country, or did they flee across the road or 1 hour's drive away, which is like what we usually call an internally displaced person? These are serious questions. Now, maybe I'm wrong. You can argue with me, but I'm simply saying that the terminology is crucial. It's crucial. Like it really, and this is the terminology that, it seeps into all the things in the media and everything, Mainstream news organizations, they always use the term refugee camp. Also in Gaza. We see the war in Gaza. They always say Israel struck a refugee camp. So most people, when they think of a refugee camp, they think of a bunch of people who've just been expelled from their homes by the Israelis, the evil Israelis. They've just been expelled. They're living in a tent in a refugee camp, and then Israel bombs the refugee camp. That's the connotation that comes up. But that's not really the case. This refugee camp is usually a neighborhood, It was a refugee camp 80 years ago. 80 years ago, people who fled from the war in 48 fled or were expelled. Some of them were expelled. I admit that as well, but most of them probably fled the fighting at the behest of the Arab leaders. Arrived in this place, became refugees, right? Because Israel wouldn't allow them back. or Israel said they can come back, and some of them came back, but a lot of them didn't want to come back because they were scared to live under Israel, didn't want to live under Israel, so they lived in a refugee camp. They were refugees, but this was 80 years ago. Now that camp is not a camp anymore. It's a neighborhood. It's got houses, it's got hospitals, it's got schools, it's got everything. People are lived in built up areas. The people who are living there, they didn't flee from somewhere else. They were born there. Maybe even their parents were born there, So again, refugee, it's an important distinction. It's an important term. And it has a huge impact on the conflict. This, the terms occupation, settler, there's the East-West Jerusalem, which I talked about. East-West Jerusalem is that like just a fact of nature that Jerusalem is divided between East and West, between Arab and Jewish Jerusalem? I say no. I said this in the video, right, that the division of East-West Jerusalem came about because in the war, in 1948, the Jordanians invaded. This was after the initial phase of the war, the local Arabs versus Jews phase of the war, what's called the Palestinians versus the Jews. And then the Arab armies invaded, which was the second phase of the war. When Jordan invaded, they captured a bunch of territory in Jerusalem. There was a ceasefire line between Israel and Jordan. Okay, and that was the border. Just the ceasefire line, the line where the fighting stopped. An armistice was signed through mediation of the UN, whatever. Okay, we stopped fighting. The soldiers were like here. The line was drawn on the map with a green pencil or green color. And that's why it's called to this day the Green Line. Just because it was a green armistice line. No joke. That's what happened. So you had the Jordanian part of Jerusalem and the Israeli part of Jerusalem, not East-West Jerusalem. And you can see this. If you go through any archive of any newspaper, you'll see Jordanian sector of Jerusalem and Israeli sector of Jerusalem. That's what it was. There was no East and West, Jew and Arab. It was just a city divided by war. And then Israel captured it in the Six-Day War. So, again, East-West Jerusalem, it's a terminology. And maybe it's a correct terminology. I don't think so. You can argue otherwise, but it is a terminology that has a big impact. When you start using those terms, you're like saying that, okay, look, it's a different entity completely. There's East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem. It's two separate things. It's not the result of war that you have just a city and it was divided, as happened in Berlin, as happened in Cyprus, and things like that, So I have a problem with some of these terminologies, East-West Jerusalem, refugee camps, things like that. I think they're quite deceptive. They don't tell the whole story. But I can also understand why people might be on the other side and say they do apply correctly. But it's definitely like a battleground, in the consciousness and in the discussion. Like what terminology wins? What terminology is the one that in the end is the most widely used? You understand? All right, time to look at some questions. There's been a ton of talk here. Damn. Okay, so I'm gonna anyone who sent a message before, like let's say 20 minutes back, I'm probably not gonna get to you, so you might have to ask the question again because I'm going from the bottom. Okay. All right. So green crayon, huh? Yeah. It was actually, it probably wasn't a crayon. It was probably a marker, a green marker. I don't know if it was a crayon or a pencil or a marker, but it was some writing device that was in green. They looked at the situation of the troops on the ground, drew the line based on that, and that became the armistice line between Israel and Jordan, what's known as the Green Line. And to this day, when people talk about the two-state solution and the border between Israel and Palestine, they're talking about that green line, that line that was drawn with the green pencil or crayon or marker. I'm gonna have to check that one up with how they painted that green thing, with what they used to paint it. But yeah, that's the deal. Yeah, then there's like a Swedish girl here says Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, for example. Terminology, again, you can call the area Judea and Samaria, you can call it the West Bank, you can call it Palestine, right? These the Palestinian territories. Also has a huge impact, okay? Okay, what else? Gain Shillis says Palestinians can live in Israel, they choose not to. Not exactly true, right? So if they're in the part of Jerusalem that Israel annexed after 67, then they can apply for Israeli citizenship or for residency. if they still reject Israel for ideological reasons, they can get residency, and then, they get all the services and everything, and they're like part of the city, but they're not citizens, right? So they're holding out for to be Palestinians at some point or something like that. So for them, it's true. But if you live in Ramallah, you can't become an Israeli citizen. You can't. So that's the thing. Love from India. What else? Okay, so 32i says, do Palestinian descendants from 80 years ago have an equal right of return as Jewish diaspora did and claimed from 2,000 years ago? So basically it's like this. The way I see it is this. Israel is a sovereign country, okay? Like any other sovereign country in the world, the number one thing that you get to decide as a sovereign country that is within your right and you can make the decision any way that you choose is who comes in and out of the country and who gets citizenship. That's your right as a state. And there's no such thing as, discrimination in citizenship. You know what I mean? Like in the sense that you don't have to, you can apply whatever criteria that you want. And the criteria can even be discriminatory. For example, and by the way, and all countries do this, right? So like, if you're in Israel and you want to go to the US, you need to get a visa. If you're in some other country, I don't know, one of these European countries and you want to go to the US, you don't have to get a visa. For example, if you're from India, some people are here, like almost every country, you have to get a visa. If you're from Italy or Spain or Britain, most countries, you don't need to get a visa. There are free entry agreements between different countries. If you're British, you can enter Australia. If you're East Africa, when I was there, you're Kenya, you can enter Ethiopia and things like that. So this is like a basic thing that you have as a country. Your basic right as a country is who comes in and who comes out, who becomes a citizen, who doesn't become a citizen. So I would say about that is, I don't think someone living somewhere around the world has a quote right, an individual right to say, 2,000 years, I can do this or that. Israel, as a state, as a sovereign country, has a right to say, okay, we have people who are of our group that we have an affinity with, meaning they're Jews, so they share the same culture, they share the same heritage, they share much of the same history, much of the same story, and based on the social cohesion, people want to come. We allow them to come. Just as in Germany, there's a return law that if you have a grandparent who's German or whatever, then you can go. Or the Irish, they have someone who's Irish in America, then you can go. The thing about the Jews who came, the early Zionists, as we call, came in the late 19th century, in the early 20th century, is that they didn't supersede the right of a sovereign country. Meaning, you didn't have a country called Palestine, and then the Jews said, we don't care that you Palestine don't want us to come. We're going to go against your will anyway, and also claim a plot of land that somebody is currently living on. That's a different situation. What they did was, you had the empire that was present at the time, which was either the Ottomans or the British Mandate, and they came, looked for plots of land that were up for sale, bought them legally under the laws of the sovereign power at the time, which was either the British or the Ottomans, purchased the land, and then legally immigrated there with the consent of the leadership or the authority present at the time. And by the way, this is a very fascinating thing because there is a recorded discussion in 1937 or 8 or 9, I don't remember which it was, I think it was 37, when the Peel Commission was convening in the Palestine Mandate, right, the British Mandate of Palestine, to see if they can find a solution for the Jews and the Arabs. The Peel Commission, you can check it up. That was the first suggestion of partition. It was the first time people from the outside, which was the British, were looking and saying, okay, these two groups, their differences are irreconcilable. What we need to do is we need to split, right? We need to split. We need to give some to the Arabs and some to the Jews. So they did the Peel Commission and they offered a split, which the Arabs rejected, and the Jews were like almost rejected, but kind of accepted because it was like gave them like a very small slither of land. But it was rejected. That was the Peel Commission. And the Peel Commission was very much based on a report called the Hope-Simpson Report, where many of the Jewish leaders and the Arab leaders talked to the British authorities because the British were trying to understand what's going on. And there's a famous discussion that happens in that report where one of the British colonial administrators, I don't remember his name, is interviewing Haj Amin al-Husseini, none other than Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, the leader of the Palestinian movement at the time, of the Arab movement at the time. And, this is the famous man who went to Berlin, spent time with Hitler and all that, right? I'm not going to get into that, but he was like let's say not a big fan of the Jews, very non-compromising, so had no reason to say something in favor of the Jews. And in this interview, which is recorded, and you can look it up on Google, he specifically says, he's interviewed by the British authority, and who asks how, what the Jews were doing with the land, like the Jews were taking the land, how they acquired the land, and he says that the Jews acquired the land legally from landowners. And then the guy asked him, which landowners? Arab landowners or not? He says mostly Arab landowners who sold the land. Sometimes they were absentee. They could have been Turkish landowners from the Ottomans, but they purchased the land. And he's pressed on this. And again, this is Haj Amin, right? This isn't a Zionist. This is like the biggest anti-Zionist that exists in the history of the world, pretty much. And he says again and again, when they press him, he says that they bought the land. He said there were peasants who were, they were kicked off the land in the sense that they had a landowner who was like a Turk or maybe an Arab or someone, whoever it was. The Jews came, they bought the land, and then when the Jews bought the land and used the land for whatever purpose they wanted, then the falach was kicked out, unfortunately, right? But Haj Amin Husseini himself said that the Jews purchased the land. So again, I'm saying it's a completely different situation, because you have one situation where, okay, you have some sort of sovereign power. In that case, it was the Ottomans or the British, a colonial power, and you are doing something with the consent of the controlling power, right? So you're not barging into colonial mandatory Palestine, the British territory, and claiming an area inside against the government's desire. You're going to the authority at the time, and you're saying, I want to purchase this land. You register the purchase, and then you purchase the land. It's a different situation. The Palestinians, when they talk about right of return now, they're saying we have a right that supersedes the current sovereign of the area, which is Israel. So Israel is a state, like I said, again, unless you deny the fact that Israel is a state. I mean, that's what it comes down to, which most people do who are anti-Israel. They say, look, Israel is not a real state. Israel doesn't qualify as a state. Israel is an occupation. Israel is a colony. Israel is this. Therefore, you don't get the right to control your border. You just don't have the right to control your border. You have to allow the Palestinian right of return, as it's called, supersedes your rights as a sovereign nation, because you don't have rights as a sovereign nation. That's the argument. And I respect that argument. I mean, at least you're being honest. You're saying, look, I don't think Israel is a country. Israel doesn't deserve to be a country. So you don't deserve to decide citizenship in your own country. You just don't. You don't get to, the Palestinians have a right of return. You let them in, or they'll force themselves in. Just like they did on October 7th. You have no right to control your border. You have no right to control your citizenship. Okay? But that's what they're saying, and that's why I view it as a fundamental difference. And it's something that keeps coming up, because people always say, "Oh, you lived there 2,000 years ago, then you have a right to quote return." But a Palestinian whose grandfather lived wherever doesn't have a right to return. And I say, for me, it's not a question of an individual right. I don't think any person anywhere in the world who's Jewish individually has some God-given right, or has some right that supersedes the right of some other individual or whatnot. I think the state has the right to declare its own laws and its own immigration policy, like any state. And this is like a much talked about thing around the world when we talk about states, right? Like the US, they want to stop immigration from southern border. In Europe, they want to stop illegal immigration. Like every country, it's a discussion. Like, what do you do with your border? What do you do with immigration? Who becomes a citizen? Who doesn't become a citizen? That's like the most basic thing. And I think, if you grant citizenship based on cultural affinity or even religion, it makes more sense than a lot of other things, And you can do that. Like, there are other countries around Israel. There's Egypt, there's Syria, there's Jordan. I don't tell them what their immigration policy should be. Like, I don't have a right to say somebody else supersedes their border rights. I can't force Egypt to take in Palestinian refugees, for example, from Gaza, which is a much talked about thing. I can't force them. I can't say to them, you have no right to have a border with Gaza. You have to let them in. They have to go in. You know what I mean? I can say that I think it's moral, that it's the correct thing to do, because, they're suffering in Gaza, and until the war ends, they should go into Egypt, but I can't force them. It's their choice. You have to respect their sovereignty. You have to respect their choice as a sovereign country. And I certainly don't tell them, generally what their immigration policy should be. If one of Israel's neighbors decides they want to import 50 million Chinese people because they decide, that's their right. I can't, I can say it's racist, whatever, but it's not against the law. It's not against international law. It's not against anything. It's their right as a sovereign country. I want these people to come in. I don't want these people to come in. That's it. And if you say no, if you're against that, then you're basically, that's a direct challenge to a country's sovereignty. You're essentially saying, I don't recognize your sovereignty, which is, of course, what's going on in the case of Israel. The Arabs and Muslims mostly don't recognize Israeli sovereignty. That's why they're so adamant on this right of return. Because basically, if they can keep hold of that, they can keep hold of a concept that is rejecting Israel as a sovereign nation, and that can undo Israel as a sovereign nation. All right, what else is okay. All right, so back, 32i asks, so should Palestine be a sovereign nation that controls their citizenship because Israel maintains registry of Palestinians? So yeah, I would say, look, my position, I would say that what I want for myself, I want for them, right? So the same way Israel is a state, and Israel as a state makes its own sovereign decisions concerning, citizenship and things like that. I think the Palestinians should have the same thing, right? So if there is established a state called Palestine, right? The borders are agreed upon with Israel, the peace process, as it's called, succeeds, we establish Palestine. At that point, Palestine should be able to dictate their own immigration policy, of course. I can't tell them who to bring in and not to bring in. So if they want to bring in Palestinian refugees called, from anywhere, then that's their right. If they want to bring in a bunch of workers from Philippines, they can do that as well. That's, once they establish the state, they can bring in whoever they want to bring in. That's the way it should be. I mean, realistically, we're not anywhere close to a solution, and there's a lot going on there. But I'm saying that as a concept, yeah, of course they should. If they're sovereign, then of course they should make their own decisions about borders and things like that. Like who comes in, who comes out, who's a citizen, who's not. That should be their decision. Someone says, I'm watching you from Palestine. It got a bit better now. Can you shout out for me? Shout out what exactly? I've been shouting here. All right. What else? Someone says, Egypt has a right not to let Gaza in after Hamas backed the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah, I mean, look, they have their own considerations, their various considerations. Yeah, again, there's the immediate border consideration of a country like Egypt, which is, concern about bringing in all those Palestinians, also how it will look in the Arab world because they're betraying the Palestinians, they're helping Israel get rid of them and so forth, supposedly, right? So that's an immediate concern. But then there's just also a general concern of okay, we have a country, what do we do with the country? Who do we want to give citizenship to? Who do we want to come in? By the way, it's interesting because when I was in Egypt, as you guys know, I was in Egypt. When I was in Cairo, I saw so many refugees. This was in 2023. This was before October 7th, 2023. This was in May 2023. I saw so many refugees, but not Palestinian refugees. I saw so many Syrian refugees. I saw so many Sudanese refugees. I saw a few Lebanese. Did not see any Palestinians. I saw one Palestinian who was a friend of mine. It's someone I was in contact with from when I was working in the news. He was a contact in Gaza. Someone I would talk to. We would get perspective. And he had a pretty much free ability to pass into Egypt because when the conflict's not going on, it's pretty easy to cross from Gaza into Egypt. And he was in Cairo when I was there, and we talked and we met. It was the first time I met him. I talked to him many times on Telegram. It was the first time I met him. And he was you could call him a a Gazan refugee, right? He was mainly a refugee from Hamas because they tortured him because he tried to make peace with Israelis. Well, not make peace with Israelis. He tried to talk with Israelis on Skype. Him and his friends would talk with Israelis on Skype, and then Hamas found out and they imprisoned him and then they tortured him, and just for talking, right? And then eventually he kind of like basically left. So yeah. That was the thing. I saw all the other refugees there, though. I saw tons of Syrians and Sudanese refugees, but I didn't see any Palestinian refugees. Okay, here's an interesting one. This is an interesting one. Why did Israel fund Hamas back in the day, right? Who said this? Mr. Pumpkin says hi. Should we put Mahmoud Abbas in charge of Gaza? Interesting. Why Egypt should take more refugees? It is enough. It's a good question. Lebanon too. Okay, someone says, I'm Egyptian and I support Palestinians to have their own country in Gaza, and I don't want Hamas to exist, and we only want peace. This is enough. Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of agree with you, right? I think basically Gaza was part of Egypt up until 67, between 48 and 67, right? Then in the 6-Day War, Israel took it. And then in 2005, Israel gave it back. Like Israel withdrew from Gaza, and Gaza came completely under the control of the Palestinians, who voted in Hamas. Hamas then killed the Fatah, the rivals, the rival Palestinian faction, and have since ruled with an iron fist. But I think, like, you know, I know that, like, when you say this, people get very angry at you when you basically say that Gaza is essentially a state, you know, in the sense that people talk about the blockade and that Israel is trying to block weapons from entering Gaza, but there are no Israelis in Gaza. Like, there's not one Israeli citizen in Gaza. There's not one now with the war, but I'm saying before the war, not one Israeli soldier, not one Israeli administrator, no Israelis were entering there. They had complete control of their own territory. So they had essentially what is a state. And then, you know, the question is, what do you do with your sovereignty? What do you do with your control? Because before they could say, like in the West Bank, it's true that Israel has a presence there and the Israeli military can go in and this, and it's like we have to get rid of the Israeli presence. But in Gaza, Israel did it for them. Israel pulled out in 2005, what's called a disengagement. So basically from that point onward, Gaza is a state for the Palestinians, like you said. Like you want the war to end and you want Gaza to be under control of Palestinians. That's the situation that we had. But the problem was that Hamas had a goal of annihilating Israel, which they are very proud of. So they used a lot of the resources that they had to build the rockets and the tunnels and to launch wars against Israel. But of course it would be great. It would be great if you had a leadership in Gaza that took the situation that they have and built the hotels and built the economy and whatever, and didn't invest it in the war, you know? So I'm not against them being in control of Gaza. They're already, once Israel pulled out in 2005, Israel basically rescinded any claim it might have had over Gaza for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into the whole international law thing. I'm just saying Israel pulled out. Once Israel pulled out, it was like, we have no more claim. We have no claim whatsoever to any part of Gaza. Gaza is yours 100%. But unfortunately, they started immediately firing rockets into Israel. So what happened is that they had a state that was at war. And now they have a state which is at war, constantly at war with Israel, because they want to destroy Israel. And they say they want to destroy Israel. So it's hard to build a state under those conditions. You know, you have you have a very powerful neighbor, which is Israel, with a very sophisticated military and everything, and your starting position is, we reject Israel, our goal is to annihilate Israel and kill Jews, and then it's seriously harming your chance of succeeding as a state, or your chance of administrating your territory and making something good out of it. What can you do? Once Israel pulled out, it became a concentration camp? No, it didn't. I mean, if you look at videos of Gaza, there's Mercedes dealerships, there's fancy hotels, There's high-class malls. There's the good new supermarkets, the ones with the aisles and all the new produce. There's restaurants. It's not a concentration camp. That's just a lie. It's a lie that's taken hold, but it's a lie. As terminology, we're talking about terminology in this live stream, right? That's a case where the terminology that Gaza as a concentration camp has caught on. It's now kind of thrown around and sort of accepted terminology, but it's simply false. It's not true. Someone said something about funding Hamas before. I found that was an interesting question. Some Nasir or something, right? Where was it? He said, wait a second. You said, by the way, guys, if you want me to answer your question for sure, you can send a super chat or a super thanks because there's a lot of people here and I don't necessarily get the, I can't answer everyone. So I try to answer, but if you send a super chat, even a small one, $1, $2, anything, then I can see it straight away. It pops up. I can answer your question. Okay, Ali Nawesel says, why did Israel fund Hamas back in the day? Okay, so this is an interesting question. And it comes to an interesting point of discussion that comes up in the Israel-Palestine thing, which is the idea that Israel created Hamas. Yeah, this is something that I hear a lot. Basically, people say, look, you have this war now with Hamas because Israel rejected the peace process, right? Israel didn't want to make peace. They wanted to build settlements. And Israel basically funded and built Hamas so that it could be in a forever war with the Palestinians and steal their land. That's something that it's on Twitter, I hear it a lot, but also just from people generally when I was in discussion where they say, look, Israel created Hamas, right? Israel, through its actions, through its funding, or through whatever it is, Hamas is Israel's creation. So, Swedish girl sent me a contribution here. Thank you. Very generous. So Israel created Hamas. Now, there's a couple problems with this. The first one, which I think is obvious, is that Hamas is officially the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm talking about Hamas now. What's your opinion on Hamas? Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood branch of Palestine. So the Muslim Brotherhood, it's an international movement, Islamic political movement, and exists in various constellations. It has a lot of armed militant groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS even. And it was founded in Egypt by Hassan al-Banna in 1929, right? The Egyptian school teacher Hassan al-Banna. He founded the Muslim Brotherhood. So the ideology, the basis of the ideology not only was funded before modern Israel was founded, but it also exists in a lot of other places that Israel, unless you're one of the psychos, conspiracy theorists, is not connected to, like ISIS. But even then on Twitter, people say Israel created ISIS, but whatever. I mean, you get it, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, so forth. The ideology exists outside of Israel. So it's not like this, Israel created it, then why does it exist all over the world, this Muslim Brotherhood ideology? So that's one point. But the other point that's interesting about the Israel created, funded Hamas created Hamas. First of all, Israel didn't create Hamas and also didn't fund them that much. But it's true, and this is an interesting point, and something that I would also have to do more research into because I can't claim that I know everything about it, although I still know more than the rando online, is that in the early 80s, like in 1982, 3, after the Lebanon War as well, basically the seeds of Hamas began to be sown. But Hamas, I'm pretty sure, was officially founded in, I think the charter is from 1987, but it was quote founded before that. So Hamas, basically early 80s, Hamas is beginning to be founded, yeah? So Hamas is emerging. And the thing is that up until Hamas, Israel basically had Fatah, right? Someone here says sup monkeys. Israel had Fatah. Fatah was Fatah is the party of Mahmoud Abbas, right? It was the party of Yasser Arafat inside the Palestine Liberation Organization. It was the main movement. The PLO, you had the PLO and you had Fatah, and then you also had things like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, Northern Syria Command or something, where there was a bunch of little groups, but all the groups functioned in the same way. They all rejected Israel, and they all were big fans of terrorism. Like, this is endless amount of specific cases that we can go into. Like, the most famous example is two most famous examples are Munich Olympics massacre, right, which was the Black September group, which was from the Fatah movement of Yasser Arafat, and Entebbe airplane hijacking, right, which I made a video about recently when I was in Uganda, which you should watch, when I went to Entebbe. So it's like, this is, and there's a lot of other things. There was the other airplanes that were hijacked. There was the boat where they murdered the guy, the guy who was honeymooning there, the Jewish guy. Like, there's a lot of stories of terrorism done by Fatah, like in international scenes. So this was the group that Israel had. It's also, by the way, why Villers sent a super chat. Thank you so much. It's also the reason why there was no, quote, process at that time, because basically Yasser Arafat was leading the Palestinians, and Yasser Arafat said no to Israel, and Yasser Arafat was leading all these terrorist attacks. And then some in the international community, like the Americans and the Europeans, said, look, we see you as the legitimate leader of the Palestinians, because he was their most prominent one. And he was the one who started like the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, in the 60s. We said, we want to deal with you in regard to Israel, but you have to recognize that you have to say that you want to make peace with Israel. You have to, like, quote, recognize Israel for us to view you as a legitimate leader of the Palestinians to make a negotiation between you and Israel. Okay? So he eventually kind of did that in the late 70s. In the late 70s, Arafat, he went first to the Europeans, and he said he was very he didn't actually want to say that he accepts Israel, because he didn't believe in that, and because he couldn't say that to his supporters and everything. But he starts to use the language of, yeah, we kind of accept Israel and we want to negotiate with Israel. So basically, he's doing this transformation, Arafat, the transformation from someone who just says, look, I'm going to use armed resistance, right, terrorism, to statesman, right? Which is, by the way, what a lot of people around the globe did. Like, Nelson Mandela used terrorism and became a statesman eventually. So, I'm not saying you can't transition from a terrorist into a statesman. Yitzhak Shamir did the same thing. He became Israeli prime minister. When he was young, he was a terrorist with the Lehi group, and he became prime minister. So you can transition from terrorist to statesman. It's possible. It's not ideal, but it's possible. Samak says, I'm Egyptian, love your work, keep up the great work. Thank you. So I'm saying Arafat began this transition from being a full-blown reject Israel, launch terror attacks, to becoming a statesman, So up until that point, in the peace process, which began in 1991, right, the Madrid conference, this was the lead up to the Oslo Accords, Israel didn't have a negotiation. There was no moderate Palestinian group that Israel was negotiating with to form the two-state solution or something like that, There was no one else. There was only PLO, Fatah, and the Popular Front, who had a history of launching terror attacks. That's what Israel was dealing with. There was no, so they weren't considered moderate by Israelis. They weren't the moderates, supposedly, that they are now. I don't think they're moderates now. I'm just saying that's what you had. And then in this situation, after years of Yasser Arafat and Fatah and all that, a new group starts to emerge. And this new group has a slightly different ideology and philosophy. For one thing, they put a lot more emphasis on religion. They encourage people to go to the mosques. They encourage people to study. They encourage the social zakat, charity and welfare. And they want to give more influence to the imams and things like that. It's more of a religious movement. And on the Israeli side, and this was again, ISIS didn't exist back then. Hezbollah was just coming into being. The Taliban, this was before the era of big Islamic fundamentalist groups, So from the Israeli perspective, if you look at it from the Israeli perspective, you go to the early 80s, it's you have a terrorist or a group run that has a history of committing terror against Israel, that's not interested in any type of agreement with Israel. And then you have a new group that's emerging that seems to be putting emphasis on some other things, like religion. What do you do? And you don't have the future sight available like we have now. We have hindsight. You're in 1980s, early 1980s. You have Yasser Arafat, committed a gazillion terror attacks against Israel, was not willing to recognize Israel, is starting to maybe do that, but you still have no negotiation going on with Yasser Arafat, and now a new group is emerging. Interesting. So some people in Israel, when they saw that situation, they were like, okay, let's support this group to weaken Arafat. Maybe we should try back this group because they seem like they're better than Arafat and Fatah. That's what happened. Like, how much did they actually support them? How much did they, how much money did Israel give Hamas? I don't know exactly. I don't think it was much, but I definitely agree that what people say that Israel kind of supported Hamas at the beginning, there's some truth to it. So here, someone says here, Lo me'avat Mordechai ela sinat Haman. That's a saying in Israel, which is in Hebrew, which is they didn't do it because they loved them, but because they hated the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, So Hamas were challenging Fatah, which was the mortal enemy of Israel. So Israel thought that maybe if they support them, then they can, it can mitigate the influence of the Fatah people, That's what happened early on. As far as how much did they? The guy here said, the guy who asked the question, he said that Israel funded. I don't know how much they funded them. I don't think they poured billions into Hamas. Yeah, but I think they did help them with their social welfare programs and to when the leadership was emerging a little bit to kind of help them. Because Israel was in control in Gaza, right? So, this neighborhood, there's Hamas people here, or of the new movement here, then let's help build, a school here, let's build a facility here. They were trying to play them off against Fatah because they thought that they could be better maybe than Fatah. That's the way it was in the early 80s. It's as far as the more recent funding of Hamas, which happened in 2018, well, that was just blackmail, yeah? That was just, okay, Israel, Hamas is firing rockets at Israel, Israel fires back, a lot of destruction in Gaza, ceasefire is signed, and then, to keep the ceasefire, Hamas is demanding reconstruction. Qatar says, oh, we'll give them money. And then Israel says, oh, but we don't want to give them the money because Hamas is going to take it to build more rockets. And then Qatar says, oh, here, just take the cash. We'll give you I don't know how many $1 million in cash and transfer it. And we'll make sure they distribute it to the people or something like that. And that's the famous bags of cash thing that's talked about a lot in Israel in 2018. It's the beginning of the downfall of Netanyahu's policy with Gaza, where basically Netanyahu basically says, I'm just going to pay off Gaza with no plan until it blows up in my face, which is what happened. User says Mossad supported Hamas. Okay, fine. So I just talked about the whole thing, my whole position on Israel supporting Hamas. I gave my opinion on it. You guys can. Mr. Samak says it wasn't even called Hamas back then. Yeah. So what was it called? It wasn't. It was the Islamic movement or something. It was the Muslim. Like I said, the ideology existed because the Muslim Brotherhood ideology existed in Egypt and other places long before Hamas, right? The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Egypt in 1929. So the ideology existed among Palestinians, and then it started to grow and gestate, and started to pose a potential rival to Fatah. And because Fatah was the arch enemy, and there was no Israelis didn't see any hope in reaching something with Fatah, then they started to consider the possibility that Hamas could be better than Fatah for Israel, which I think is proven to be wrong. Yeah. Yeah, Samak says exactly. They call themselves Jama Islamiyah or something like that. Yeah, maybe. I think, wasn't Jama Islamiyah the group that assassinated Anwar Sadat? I think. No, I don't remember because there was a group inside the Muslim Brotherhood that assassinated. Maybe it was like Tahrir al-Islam or something like that. I don't remember the name, but the guy who assassinated Sadat was the president who made peace with Israel, right? The Egyptian president who made peace with Israel. For those who don't know, was assassinated a few years later by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt because the Muslim Brotherhood ideologically are against Israel. So like that's it's like that same Islamic movement that was growing in the 80s in the Middle East, and now is like. I don't know, I think they reached their heyday with ISIS, and now like they've just been beaten down and people just understood that they're really extreme and don't want them, Noam says, I was an Egyptian soldier. Okay, wait a second. So let's reset here because I gave like unusually long answers today. I don't know if you guys ever been in my live streams. I usually answer like quite concisely. Today I gave like really long answers because I took some like complicated questions. So yeah. Okay, and then someone says the Jordanian king was also killed, I think by PLO or Black September. Yeah, so the Jordanian king Abdallah, the first Abdallah, not Abdallah II. Abdallah II is the Jordanian king now. Abdallah I was the king was assassinated in 1951. He visited Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem, he visited like Al-Aqsa area, which was under his control then, Jordan's control. And a Palestinian like assassinated him, right? Someone who was against a local Jerusalemite Arab against Abdallah's possible, I don't know, let's say, I wouldn't call it concession to Israel, but Abdallah was always, the Jordanians were always the country that were the most open to the idea of normalizing relations with Israel early on, for various reasons, which I won't get into. But they were always like the most moderate, So for that reason. What else? Kurds are Christian. On the stairs of Al-Aqsa, he got killed. Yeah. This guy says, I know that you are being kicked from Egyptian motor taxi guy. Yeah, that's what I'm most famous for on Twitter. It's unfortunate because, look, I made a video about my trip to Egypt, which was one of my early videos. And it was an interesting trip. I liked it. Yeah, I learned a lot. I met some nice people. I met some not so nice people. Specifically like on the Israel issue. But I think like in the video, I think the video has a positive message overall, and I think I did what I could to like tell a good story and try to remain positive and try to like show Egypt from my perspective as an Israeli, And I think the video was good and a lot of people liked it. I think a lot of Egyptians also liked it because they saw that I was trying to do something good, And yeah, I mean, for me, it's unfortunate that some people, they like stole that part of my video, yeah, and uploaded it out of context. Didn't show like the second taxi driver that I took afterwards who took me, even though I said I was from Israel. He didn't kick me off, like they wanted to promote this, Israeli kick him off thing. And, it's, what can I say? So yeah, sometimes it went on Twitter and then I went to Twitter and asked to take it down because it's like my copyrighted content, same thing on YouTube, whatever. But it just goes around. Once in a while, someone sends me, now it's already a bit old, so it's not happening as much. But then someone would send me oh, look, I saw it on this Facebook group. Arab friends of mine would say, and then I would see it has 500,000 views. It was a really, really popular scene, that scene of it. And again, that says something not good, right? I think. I mean, if you kick a tourist off a motorbike because he's from Israel and everyone gets so excited that they have to share it everywhere. Look at this, they kicked him off. It's what are you doing with this? This is just petty behavior, it doesn't help the Palestinians, it doesn't do anything. It's just stupidity, I think. And so that's what can I say? I even regret that I put that scene in the video. It was a great scene, it's a real vlog where something real happened, and But it's kind of like the fact that it was used in that way is kind of like, yeah, I don't like it. Salut, bro, from France. Latino have French. Thanks. Do you support Israel or Palestine? Oh my God, I can't take that question. Keep being asked. I give my positions. You decide. What? By the way, was it difficult for the Egyptian guy to enter Israel with his European passport? It wasn't easy for him to get like the visa, or did he need a visa? There's like a very cheap visa that if you're European that you get. I do know though that he was interrogated quite seriously at the airport, which is, remember, he came here also like a month after October 7th, right? After like the worst security incident in the history of Israel, the worst terror attack in the history of Israel. A month later, this Egyptian guy with an Egyptian name, Mahmoud, lands at Ben Gurion Airport. So, you know, they interrogated him very hard, but in the end it was like, okay, off you go. And they let him in, and and he had a good time in Israel. I always say this about Israel, is I can't vouch for the border. Because when you come into Israel, like the security is pretty rough, and there's a lot of reasons for for the security to be concerned. There's a lot of threats that we have, and sometimes it can be unpleasant, like they really interrogate you. But once you're in Israel, then after that, it's like super democracy as far as I'm concerned. Like you can do whatever you want, you can film, you can say whatever you want, and it's fine. Like it's not like vlogging, and you can vlog here. It's not like being in Russia or China where you're living in some dictatorship where it's like not like that at all. Some people think it is, but it's not. Like the only rough part is actually the airport and getting in. Once you're in, it's like, So, people don't believe me. They see, like, I show them the video, the Egyptian guys with me going around, all good, and they don't believe me. They say it's fake. They say, oh, without me, he can't walk around. The guy was here for like 2 weeks. The 12 out of the 14 days, he was without me. What do you think he did all that time? What, he hid in his hotel room? He walked around. He lived. He did. It's, we have tons of Arabs here as well. Like, why wouldn't he be able to walk around? It's not a... So yeah, I mean, that's just a reality versus perception thing. What can I say? Okay. Someone here says I used to live in 13 years. No journalist in jail, says iPhoenix. In Israel? No. We don't have any journalists in jail in Israel. Not that I know of. I know in, like, for example, in the West Bank or Gaza, Israel has arrested Palestinians who say they are journalists, But I don't know, I don't know. I don't think that's happened that often, but I think it has happened. But I don't know every case. But, like, there are people who say they're journalists who are... Like the Al-Jamal guy who was an Al Jazeera journalist with hostages in his basement, So I don't know. Like in the West Bank, it's a different story because it's not under Israeli control, and it's like it's a different world there. But I'm saying, as far as like in Israel, if you're a citizen of Israel, you can say and do whatever the fuck you want. Like this idea of... It's like strange when people report from Israel, then everyone says, oh, like they were taking on a propaganda tour of Israel, and like as if Israel is the Kremlin or something, or it's the Communist Party of China. Like to come to Israel, you have to get a guided tour with the government of Israel, and otherwise, like it's just not like that, It's I can say whatever I want. I can say, oh, fuck Bibi, he's a piece of shit. I think he should be arrested and put in jail for corruption. And and down with the government. Fuck the government. I think they should all be put in bars, behind bars, and with handcuffs. Every single one. The Likud, all of them. I don't really believe that. Yeah, I mean, I don't like them, but I don't believe that. But I just said it now. Like I can say whatever the fuck I want. Like it's not like I said that now. Oh, someone's gonna come for me. Like the door's gonna barge open and the KGB are gonna arrest me. It's like it doesn't work like that here. You can say whatever you want here. We have freedom of speech, and we don't get credit for it. Like we actually, the freedom of speech is used against us, because then people on Twitter, they're like, oh, look, Israelis say it's Bibi's fault, so it must be Bibi's fault. It's like, no, they're exercising their freedom of speech. Which you can't do in the other places. You can't exactly go and say, look, Gaza, Hamas, maybe you should release the hostages and end the war because we're suffering. If you say that, then you're in danger. They just executed a bunch of protesters. In Israel, you can protest all day, every day, and it's fine. You don't even believe Bibi is corrupt? What the fuck? I didn't say I don't believe Bibi is corrupt. When I said that Bibi should be, and his whole government should be locked up and put behind bars, I was exaggerating. That's all I'm saying. I'm not a supporter of Bibi. Everyone, people who know me, know, I'm not as anti-Bibi as a lot of, people in Tel Aviv and stuff, but I've never been a Netanyahu supporter, and I think he does Israel a lot of damage. I agree. I just think the idea of locking up his whole party in jail is just ridiculous, right? It's not that's an exaggeration. I was just saying it though, just to make a point that I can say, Prime Minister of Israel Netanyahu, I think should be locked up from now until the end of time, and all his government and supporters. I can say that, and nobody's gonna come and arrest me. You know what I mean? It doesn't. I could say that I can go in the street. I can go in front of the Israeli parliament and put up a sign saying Bibi is a criminal. You want to see me do it? I can do it on my next live stream. Nobody's going to do anything to me. That's just, this isn't a dictatorship, and this isn't you can say whatever you want, And that's what's funny, because it's kind of you have I remember there was this, some of you might have seen that famous debate that happened on Joe Rogan, right? Between Douglas Murray and Joe Rogan. Anyone who's kind of follows the Israel news cycle probably knows about it. So you probably know Douglas Murray. He's a very pro-Israel journalist. And he was on Joe Rogan to promote this new book that he wrote about the Israel-Hamas war. And he was there with this comic guy who's a friend of Joe Rogan, Dave Smith, who's more pro-Palestinian. And they were talking, and he was talking about the fact that so many people who talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are never actually here. They don't actually visit here. They've never been here, And the thing is that, that point didn't land so well, because it's kind of sounded like he's trying to basically shut people up. It's if I tell someone here on the chat, oh, you've never been to Israel, then you don't know, then you can't talk, you can't say anything or whatever, then it sounds like I'm trying to silence criticism or something, even though that's not exactly what it is. But the funny thing was that afterwards, when I saw some of the responses that were going on on Twitter and on social media about that exchange, and also Joe Rogan, he had a comedian on where they were making fun of this guy, Douglas Murray, but have you been there? Have you been? They were making fun of it. And then they were talking about war propaganda. I says, one of the guys was oh yeah, there's nothing like good old war tourism. You get yourself a nice tour with the propaganda department, and they take you, and And they were making fun of this idea that a person had been in Israel and reported on the war. Basically saying, oh, you were in Israel, you reported on the war. Well, you got an Israeli propaganda tour. So, I don't believe you, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not your opinion. It's they created for you the condition to see what they wanted you to see. And the thing is that, again, this is funny, because this guy, Murray, who was here in Israel, he was here for a year. It's not, I saw him on the street in Tel Aviv a couple times. It's not to come to Israel and to see things, you need a propaganda tour. Any journalist who's in Israel, he's accompanied by the Likud spokesperson at all times. It's not like that. You can come to Israel and you can walk around and explore things as a journalist even. You can walk around Jerusalem, you can walk around Tel Aviv, you can take a bus to the West Bank, unaccompanied. You don't need someone to go with you. There's no law that says there has to be someone with you. If you're going in a very anti-Israel direction and you're flashing your camera around and you're filming soldiers in their face, that might get you into some kind of trouble. But as long as you act reasonably, nothing's going to happen to you. So it's just yeah, that's the thing. This idea that in Israel, anyone who comes to Israel they see some like propaganda image of Israel. I just find it funny. Like, you can come, anyone here, well, I don't know what country you're from, because if you're from, like, I don't know, yeah, if you're like from Pakistan or whatever, it's going to be hard, or even from Egypt, but you can like come to Israel and you can walk around. By the way, my friend here, Swedish girl on adventures, Anna, she did that recently, and I helped her with make a video. She came to Israel, she wanted to come to Israel, she brought her camera, and she vlogged here freely. Nobody told her what to say or what to do. She just did whatever she wanted, you know? So there's no this idea that like if you're a journalist in Israel, then all you see is like the propaganda tour. It's just not true. Actually, most of the journalists who come here are very anti-Israel, and they make very anti-Israel content, like the settlers, right? I don't know if you guys saw that documentary by the Thoreau guy, Louis Thoreau, right? It was a big deal. He made a documentary, and it was like very anti-Israel. He just came here and he made the documentary. It wasn't nobody controlled what he did or what he said. He did what he wanted to do. All right, what else? Hater Ramos, as long as you act reasonably. Yeah, like as long as you act, I was a vlogger in a lot of places. Most places around the world, if you are observed filming a soldier, you get into big trouble, okay? Like I give anyone an experiment. Take your camera out and go to 3 countries. 4 countries. Go to Israel, then go to an Arab country like Egypt or Syria, then go to China, then go to Russia, and try in all 4 countries to film a soldier and tell me, and come back to me, or not come back to me because you'll get locked up, and tell me what happens. So that's what I mean being reasonable. Like, in the end of the day, anywhere around the world, you're not really supposed to film soldiers because, soldiers are soldiers. They do military activity, whatever. You're not filming them is always extremely problematic in any country in the world, except Israel, pretty much. In Israel, people film soldiers all the time, and 99% of the time, nothing happens to them. So Israel is very, American soldiers don't like being filmed either. Of course, no soldiers like being filmed. Like I can tell you as a vlogger, I've been to I've vlogged from over 25 countries, okay? And I can tell you that the number one way to get in trouble as a vlogger, when you're visiting a country, the number one way is not to walk into the most dangerous neighborhood. It's not to walk around at night. It's not to do any of the things. The number one way as a blogger to get in trouble around the world is to film soldiers or security personnel or police. That's the surefire way to get in trouble. Because everywhere around the world, even in the liberal countries, filming soldiers and security people is not allowed. Like, it happened to me in Madrid even. I was at the airport. This was a bit after October 7th. I was flying back to Israel. There was a big security contingent of the Madrid airport, or not a big, but there were like several like heavily armed people next to the flight to Tel Aviv, because there were, maybe something can happen because the war had just broken out. And I wanted to film it because I wanted to show like, oh, heavy security at the airport. I filmed. The soldiers came up to me, said delete it. This is in Spain, yeah, which is like a super liberal country, and I'm just with my phone I filmed. I didn't have a camera or anything. And it was, in the airport, I filmed a security guy, This isn't like, so that's what I'm saying. When I say be reasonable, I mean like don't, and still tons of people film soldiers in Israel. Like any video of the old city of Jerusalem, you see people walking around, they film the border police, they film this, and nothing happens to them. So Israel is like very liberal in that sense. Again, like very democratic. You can walk around, you can film and stuff. You can go into the West Bank and film. You can do all that. It's like you have to be really stupid to get in trouble. Like you have to do something very, very stupid. What else? Greetings from Indonesia. Have you got any Palestinian friends? I don't really have Palestinian friends. I have like some Arab friends more, mostly former colleagues from when I worked at the news channel. But like Palestinian, not so much. You know, back in the day when I was on this program, this like peace program, and I met some Palestinians, there was one guy there that I really liked that I had a couple discussions with, and he used to come to Israel quite a lot. Like he would cross through the checkpoint next to Jerusalem, and like he taught some Arabic here in Israel, and he was taking part in a bunch of programs. He was super cool. Like I remember I met him, and I was like, he spoke good English, and I kind of like, I had a good vibe with him. I felt like I could just like sit and talk with him, even if we disagreed on stuff. But I just don't, you know, I don't really, I haven't been like in that area that much. I've been, but not that much. So don't really have Palestinian friends. But I have Israeli Arab friends who some people would call Palestinian. But yeah, but also not like close friends, more like colleagues. Good Times Vlogs. What is that? Wait a second. I'm getting harassed here on the phone. Give me a sec. Someone is calling me. But wait, so there's some questions here in the meanwhile. I'll see what I can answer. Someone said sound went. Yeah, it went because I got a phone call, so it shut off the sound. So, Good Times Vlogs. So, someone is a vlogger. Say, what is your opinion on a two-state solution? Yeah, like, I mean, basically, I support it. Like, in the sense that I think each group should be master of its own fate and sovereign over its own area, and you know, make the best state that they can. The problem is though, that the way I see it is I don't think it's primarily about land. You know, I don't think the main issue that the Arab and Muslim world have with Israel is that Israel is occupying like some land that it shouldn't be occupying. And there's some racists in that area, like the settlers. And if Israel would like pull those people out and that territory out, then, you know, then the other side would be like, oh, that's what we wanted. Very nice of you. And then we'd get along. Like, I just don't, I don't see that as being what's going on. I think what's going on, and I base this a lot on all the comments that I've received on my videos and my experience and everything. And is that there is a deep passionate ideological opposition to Israel's existence amongst Jews and amongst Muslims and Arabs, like as a narrative. Like there are certain narrative constructs that are very, very strong in the Arab and Muslim world as to why Israel existing is a big crime and why removing Israel would be a great thing. And, you know, creating a Palestinian state, like the two-state solution, doesn't resolve these things. So for example, one very, very strong thing that most Arabs and Muslims believe in, and they tell you this again and again, and I know, and I've received dozens of comments to this effect, is that the Jews had great lives under Muslims, right? So they constantly say, look, when you lived under us, the Muslims, like things were great. We were so great to you, and you're so ungrateful now by oppressing the Palestinians, like in response, sort of thing. Basically, once there was a time where everybody got along, there was no religious tension, and then the Zionists came, and now look how racist the Zionists are. And, you know, I mean, where to begin with this? It's, like I said, I tried to look at the positive. You know, I went to Azerbaijan. I showed there how the Muslims tolerate Jews. When I was in Morocco, I met my friend Wadia, who showed me, you know, the synagogue and all that. And like, Like, I'm not saying that everything was bad, but like realistically, the Jews lived in the Muslim and Arab lands as a tolerated minority. Sometimes things were okay, and sometimes less so. There are like many cases of attacks and massacres. There's dhimmi status, where you had to, pay the jizya, the special tax, and where you got humiliated, and all these things. Like, it wasn't this wonderful life of the Jews under Muslims, not at all. And in the second half of the 20th century, all the Jews were left the Muslim countries or were kicked out, and you have no Jews left in Egypt, for example, where I was. You have tons of synagogues, and they're all empty with no Jews. So what do you say about that? So my point, so that's one point that they make that makes them like angry. It's like, why do the Jews need a state when they lived under us, everything was so great? Which it wasn't. This is just a wrong perception. So that's one thing. Then there's another thing which they say, which is that, and this also connects to the first point, which is that the Jewish issue is essentially a European issue. It's not their problem, Which is, again, look, the Jews who lived in the Middle East under the Arabs and Muslims, they lived great, while in Europe they were persecuted. And then the Holocaust happened in Europe, which has nothing to do with us, and then the Europeans came and gave Palestine to Israel or something like that. That's kind of like what they say. So it's basically we're paying the price, the Palestinians are paying the price for what the Germans did to the Jews. And the European Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, they're Europeans. They don't belong in the Middle East, they don't belong in Palestine. And we have no culpability because we treated the Jews well, as they constantly tell me, right? So that's another piece of the narrative why Israel's existence is wrong. And again, this is also wrong because it's wrong on a couple levels. The idea that European Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, are these like Polish people, are essentially Poles or Russians or whatever, and their Jewish identity is just like a religious practice, and they have no origin story that is connected to Israel in any way, is like false on a lot of levels. I could talk about this a lot, and it's a whole subject in itself, but it's again this belief that essentially Ashkenazi Jews are Europeans and that's it, and they have no connection is not true. And also the idea that the Arab world had nothing to do with the Holocaust is also not true. Haj Amin al-Husseini was a friend of Hitler's. He was the leader of the Palestinian movement, and a lot of the Arab governments were big fans of the Germans. The Farhud that happened in Iraq, where they massacred all the Jews in 1941 in Baghdad, happened because these were they were unhappy that the British had retaken control of the city as opposed to the German coup that they had supported, some of the people. They were like pro-Nazi. In Egypt, like the Nazi propaganda came in and took off, like Mein Kampf, Hitler's famous book, is popular in Arabic. Like you can get it in Egypt and Syria and things like that. Like there's a lot of fans of the Nazis in the Middle East and North Africa. You know what I mean? So it's again, this is like the story. It's like the Jews go back to Europe, right? Go back to Poland. The Middle Eastern Jews lived great lives until Zionism came along and ruined the wonderful equilibrium that we had in Palestine and everywhere else. And therefore, we are in no way responsible for this. And the Jews need to go, the Zionist creation is a completely illegitimate entity that never should have existed. Like, this is what they're saying, So it's an ideological, it's like a deep ideological belief. It's an ideological belief that there was this better time under Muslim rule, under Arab rule, and Israel coming along and creating this state is the source of the problems. If we get rid of that, then things will go back to being better as they were before. It was Israel's creation that was the illegitimate and the immoral thing that happened in the region. These are like two major concepts, and it always comes up. Like I see it. I mean, how many times do people say, go back to Poland, go back to Poland? Like most Jews in Israel don't come from Poland. They come from Arab and Muslim countries, what we call the Sephardic Jews. Why don't you address it? You'll never see, and again, it's like I see, like so many times, all the time, we treated the Jews well. We treated the Jews so well. I see it in my comments all the time. Not one of those people who talks about how well they treated the Jews will ever say anything about the thousands of Jews who left Arab and Muslim countries, who were kicked out of Arab and Muslim countries, who had all their property taken from Arab and Muslim countries. They never mention it. And again, it's narrative. It's the story. And that is the issue that they have with Israel. And that's why I'm like skeptical about the quote two-state solution, because it doesn't resolve these deep ideological leanings that the people have, which is the idea that under the Arabs and the Muslims, the Jews had great lives, and they're repaying this great kindness by creating this racist Zionist entity, and that the Ashkenazi Jews are essentially Europeans, and they need to fuck off to Europe, and they have no right to be in the region, they have no national rights. This is a deeper belief among them. So it doesn't matter what the IDF does, and it doesn't matter what land is offered. These concepts remain, and make how do you make a deal with that? You know what I mean? Singapore will always support Israel for helping us. Did you see my video in Singapore, Sky? Did you see I made a video called Israel's Secret Ally in Asia about the Israel-Singapore relationship? You should check it out. Now, what else? You support your state, but what do you believe the borders of Palestine should be sovereign at? You keep giving excuses why they shouldn't. No, I two-state is like something along the two-state proposal, right? Which is somewhere along the green line, right? The green armistice line that's kind of become like the border. So that would be like West Bank and Gaza, basically. Plus minus, like depending on, the settlement blocks. Not over 90% of what we call the settlements, Israeli settlements, are adjacent to the border, right? Are adjacent to the green line. So you annex them to Israel, and in return, you give the Palestinians like empty land somewhere else. And that way they get like what's called the West Bank and Gaza. That would be the two-state solution, essentially. It's actually not complicated to do logistically. It's all about ideology on both sides. %60 of the West Bank area C. Yeah, area, not population though. Because the settlements in area C are small. I'm talking about the population, the actual population, the people. Most of them are in big towns like Ma'ale Adumim and Ariel and this, which are close to the border. So it's true that area C is big, you're right, but it doesn't have a huge population. By the way, like the annexationists in Israel just want to annex Area C and give all the Palestinian citizenship like they did with East Jerusalem. Love Israel, greetings from Serbia, same sad history. Why'd you say same sad history? Damn, I gotta make a vlog from Serbia. Like, I was in the Balkans. I really need to make a vlog from Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia. Like, I really need to do that one. How was it in Serbia? No, I wasn't. I wasn't in Serbia. That's what I'm saying. Like, I want to make a vlog from Serbia. I didn't visit Serbia. I visited Albania. I made a vlog from there. I made a vlog from Bulgaria, Romania, Greece. Didn't make a vlog from Serbia or Bosnia. So I want to do that. Love from Bradford. After losing Jerusalem to the war, Christian crusaders haven't ruled the city for 100 years, particularly return 24 seems unlikely. Greetings from India. You was in mine country. I was watching your vlogs. Which country is that? I was in a lot of countries, I mean, I did vlog from like 20 plus countries, 25 countries actually. Now it's like, I'm like taking a break. Morocco, yeah. Morocco was good. Christians are arguably the most successful group in Israel. Probably, yeah. You like Morocco? Yeah, I like Morocco. Morocco was fun. And yeah, there was some of like the Amazigh Berber history was really cool. And I went to the Sahara and stuff and Chefchaouen and everything. You know, it's a very cool place, Morocco. And there are a lot of people are visiting Morocco now. It's like pretty safe. It's a good place. I am from Sahara. Welcome. Cool. So did you see my video in Sahara that I made when I was in, damn, I forgot, next to the Big Dune. I forgot the name of that place. That kind of tourist little town next to the dunes. I forgot its name already. Someone says, I wonder how are the normal people of Israel dealing with the war? Well, one thing, how normal Israelis dealing with the war, very lovely vlog from Morocco, thank you. One thing is that some of them are in the war. Like that's also something that people forget. The army there's a standard army and then there's reserve soldiers. So the reserve soldiers, they're called up. These are people who finished their 3-year mandatory service and they're called up as reserves. So when October 7th happened, we had this big crisis. Tons of people were called up in reserve, right? And a lot of the people who are fighting in Gaza in the war are reserve soldiers, like my cousin. My cousin, like, has done several reserve, like 2-month stretches in reserve. And like these reserve, a good friend of mine, you know, after the war broke out, like 4 months in a row, he was in reserve. And the thing is that people don't understand, like, this idea that someone, look at my friend, okay? He's 35. Well, then he was 34. Now he's 35. He's 35. He works in high tech. He's married. He has 3 kids, okay? This is his life. All of a sudden, October 7th happens. All these people get massacred and killed and kidnapped and whatever. He's called into reserve duty. What do you think he wants to do? like, do you think he wants to be spending all that time in reserve duty away from his wife, away from his kids, away from his job, so he can, like, I don't know, kill Palestinians, as they say Israeli soldiers want to do? Like, that's what he wants to do? It's like, same thing with my cousin. Same thing. He works in high tech. He doesn't have kids, but he works in high tech. He's a young guy. He lives in Tel Aviv. You know, spend months on end, including in Gaza, with his life at risk to fight this war. Like, do you think he wants that? Like, he wants to be there. He wants to kill people. He doesn't want to go back home and live his life. It's like, this is what people don't understand a lot. Like, these people who are fighting the war, they're normal people. They're normal people with normal lives, and they have no interest in wasting their time in Gaza for the purpose of, oh, you know, I don't think I'm going to go back to my wife and to my job. I think I want to go to commit genocide in Gaza. Like, that's what I really want to do, you know? It's not something you can fight, because people who believe that, they believe that. It's just like, in the end of the day, these are the people who are fighting the war. Like, it's reserve soldiers with lives who don't really want to be there. They want to do what needs to be done in order to keep Israel safe. Like, they want to do their duty. They don't want to kill people. They don't want to be away from their life so they can kill random people. Like, that's not what people want to do. Unfortunately, the war is a very difficult one, you know? So it's like, yeah, it goes on, and there is no easy way to win it. What is your religion? Jewish. Are you a soldier or trained the army? I was a soldier, but I don't do the reserve duty, which is what I talked about. The people who they come in as like a reserve. I don't do reserve. So right now, like I'm not a reserve soldier, so I have nothing to do with the military anymore. I did 3 years in the military when I was young, like everyone here. Is Israel burning in wildfire? Are you all okay? Yeah, we had these big wildfires, which caused some damage, but they've basically been put out now. But yeah, it was pretty bad. If they don't want to do, then tell them to stop bombing. Why take lives of innocent kids? But again, it's like people don't want to take lives of innocent kids. It's not like, oh, you know what? Let's bomb some kids today. It's like that's not what's going on. There's goals. The goals are to defeat Hamas and bring the hostages back. And defeating Hamas, it's like a super slow, painful process because they're entrenched among all the civilians and infrastructure there. And every strike that you make in that area, everything that happens, there's always the risk that people are going to get killed. And in these urban areas, lots of civilians get killed, not just in this war, every war. Like if you look any picture, you take a look at picture at Syria after the civil war. Take a picture of Lebanon after the Syria war. Look at Mosul or something after the war there. By the way, I saw the same thing when I was in, you know where? In the Philippines. I made a video. You can see the video. It's on my YouTube. It's of a place called Marawi, which is in Mindanao, which is the southern island of the Philippines. It's an island that's like majority Muslim. All right? And Marawi was a Muslim city that was taken over by ISIS in the Philippines. So ISIS, there was like an ISIS insurgency there in the Philippines. And they basically like took over the city, embedded themselves there, and basically like took control of this parts of the city. So then the Philippine army, they mustered around, and eventually what happened was, luckily, is that the ISIS people who were there, they allowed most of the civilians to get out. So they said most of the civilians that they were kind of like kidnapping, they said you can leave. So then when the battle ensued with the Philippine army, the civilian casualties were not as, they weren't as high as they were in Gaza. But the city was completely destroyed. Like it was bombed to shit. Every building was destroyed. Like I was there, I saw. They rebuilt it now. But if you go to the bombed out area, you go to the houses, every building is bombed. Every single one. Because that's what happens when you have urban warfare. Like urban warfare, everything gets destroyed. That's just the way it is. And it's not just in Rafah. It's the same in Mosul, that when they fought there, when the Allied forces fought the American and British forces fought the insurgency there against Iraq, against ISIS and so forth. The same thing happened when you look at Syria. The same thing happened. Every civil war looks like that. It's not just Israel. But you don't know about the other ones and you don't compare. You just look at Israel in a vacuum. You look at the pictures of people suffering and you're like, oh, Israel is doing the most terrible thing. But if you compare it to other situations, you see that it's the same or even like better. Like Israel takes more precautions and kills less civilians per fighter. You know what I mean? But if you look at it in a vacuum, then of course, like if you just look on Twitter and you see pictures of babies suffering in Gaza from the war that they started there, Hamas, and you don't compare how the IDF functions compared to anything else. You just look at every case in a vacuum. You say, oh, look at this case. They bombed this building. There were civilians there. The IDF is murdering people. Oh, look at the destruction here. Look at this. And then fine, yeah. Then it's like, oh, it's the worst thing. But if you compare it rationally with other situations, you see that it's no different, or if anything, Israel is more measured than others. But there's no getting around it. It's a brutal war. The best thing is to not have a war, not to start a war and not to continue a war. So the best thing, the only way to really keep people safe is to end the war, for sure. As long as the war is going on, then there's no perfect way of running the war and getting around the destruction and the suffering of the civilians. It's just not possible. You started all wars, my brother. Sorry. That's a funny one. Hey, Ramos, you started all wars? You? Me personally or Israel? And this war was started on October 7th. This specific war. Hamas started it. And anyone who says otherwise is just a fucking idiot. So someone here said also, can you say something on the status of Arab citizens inside of Israel? Do you believe there is systematic discrimination, as is oftentimes claimed? I don't think so. Not really. I mean, I think there's some discrimination. I think there's a bit of an issue also with the fact that the Arabs inside Israel, some of them, they associate themselves with the Arabs who are essentially our enemies in Israel. Like it could be in general, the Palestinians, but even Hamas, you know? For example, in the 2021 war, when Hamas were firing rockets at us, there were Arabs who were celebrating in Israel that they were bombing us and them, you know? So it's a complicated situation. Of course, there are a lot of people who just want to get about their lives. There are some who even serve in the IDF and are like pro-Israel. Like most are neutral, some are anti. So it makes for a difficult situation. In that sense, it's not just like some minority of Chinese people who are completely unaffiliated. They're like very much affiliated in some ways with our enemies. But I think despite that the situation here is pretty good. Like if you know, I'm in Haifa now. It's a mixed Jewish Arab city. I was in Jaffa many years. It's a mixed Jewish Arab area. They go about their lives. They do pretty well. The Christian Arabs, someone was saying this earlier, that the Christians do the best in Israel. The Christian Arabs are extremely successful in Israel. They outperform the Jews on every metric, like in their finals exams, how many have a degree, you know, the amount of lawyers and doctors, percentage, it's like higher than in the Jewish population. So they're like a model minority. They're like the Jews of the in the Jewish state where we're the majority. They're like the Jews. They like do better than everyone else. So it's like, it's. But they have also the affirmative action, you know, which is that they get into the school programs and stuff on a lower grade because, you know, to help the weaker population, and also because they don't speak Hebrew as a mother tongue, so they have a harder time on the tests. So I think in a lot of ways they're taking good care of well, and they do well. There's some racism in Israel, that's for sure. Nobody's denying that. It doesn't say that doesn't exist at all. But I don't think, I don't think they face any like serious persecution in Israel that's preventing them, for example, from getting into the job market, from studying at the top universities, and things like that. Like I think all in all, again, like if you look at it in a vacuum and you're just looking for things, which is what happens on Twitter, for example, then you can, if all day what you're doing is searching for bad things for the Arabs of Israel, then you can claim they're this terribly discriminated group. But I think if you look at it rationally, especially if you compare to like what, for example, Jews and Christians go through in neighboring countries, I think they're doing fine. Someone says, pro-genocide chat, I'm unsubscribing. Jeez. It's always funny. It's like people who, it's like they condition listening to you based on how much you just like parrot their concept or idea, which is not even true, like objectively. You know? Someone says, pass, how many Moroccan Jews are living in Israel? Well, it's them and their descendants. They're probably the largest group in Israel, I would say, Moroccan Jews, out of all the, different backgrounds of Jews that we have here. Moroccan is probably the largest because there was a huge Moroccan community, Moroccan Jewish community, like 250,000 people. And a lot of them came to Israel. They also had pretty large families, a lot of kids. So it's like, I would say now it might even be close to 1 million Moroccan Jews, probably less. Like I think they're the biggest group. So I don't think any other group of Jews, German Jews, Polish Jews, I don't think any of them are as big as the Moroccans. The Moroccans are the biggest group, I think, probably. Timo, maybe you can do video about military service in Israel. Thank you. 5 euros. Thank you very much for that. I think, look, it's, again, you have to kind of like get the permission, right? Because, You can't just go as an independent vlogger and start filming soldiers. You have to kind of get the permission from the military. That's something I could do when I worked in the mainstream media. You entered Saudi Arabia. We don't have normalization with your country, Israel, says the Saudi guy. But yeah, I entered with another passport, not with an Israeli passport. Where do the German Jews live in Israel? Well, we don't really have German Jews anymore because basically what we have is we had a big migration of German Jews. We have a name for them. It's called Yekim. We have big migration of German Jews that came in the 30s, in the early 30s. It was like a big migration into mandatory Palestine, right? Into the British mandate. So, yeah, they came in the early 30s. Anybody want to guess why they came? Someone says Hitler, yeah. So those people that was a long time ago. Like these people now, they're not like the German, like it's just Ashkenazi Jews or whatever. But even those denominations are kind of problematic because there's like mixing here. You know what I mean? Like my friend, he's a classic Ashkenazi Jew, and his wife is a Iraqi Jew. So what is his kid? What is he? He's a he's just a Jew. He's an Israeli Jew. That's what I'm saying. We're all Jews. Like that's what we have in common, and that's like our. This is our self-determination as a state. This is a society that we build. It's the attempt of the people who hate us to define us by other characteristic. To say the Jews are not a collective, right? A Jew is just Jews belong in other countries, right? They go back to where you came from. So the Jews are essentially from these other countries that they ended up in. And that's their true identity, the essence of their identity. Judaism is just a practice. You pray in the morning and that's it. So fuck off. Go back to Morocco, but go back to Poland and leave Palestine alone. So they don't believe in the idea of Jews as a collective, as a group. And, this is like you make mistakes like that at your own peril, right? I mean, if you want to believe something like that, fine. But there's implications in the real world because it turns out that someone... a Jew who has grandparents who came from Yemen is not like exactly excited about going to Yemen and living with the Houthis, So what are you going to do with him? You're going to have to kill him or expel him. Like that's the only way you're going to get rid of him. That's what they try to do and they fail. And that's why we're all suffering from this conflict. Oh, Mr. Davdav is back. Guy used to star in my live streams for many months back in the day. How large a percentage of Israeli Jews are actively practicing? It's an interesting question. I mean, look, there's the demographics of how many are ultra-Orthodox or Orthodox, then it's quite a big number. But even the people who are secular, they practice in various ways in the sense that they might do like Friday night dinner, Shabbat dinner. They might celebrate holidays like Passover. They'll do bar mitzvah. They'll do a bris, like circumcision. Like they'll do a lot of Jewish practices, even if they're not practicing. So we have a very active like secular Jews, what we call people who don't do like all the stuff, but they're still very Jewish. They still do holidays and they do a lot of the traditions, the Jewish traditions, without being very religious. Simon Shirzad says, I'm a star in your streams. Are you? A star in my streams? I see you're doing a piece with the other people. You're creating flags and shaking hands. But it's severe in Gaza. The genocide, isn't it, sir? I can see that the people fighting are also human beings. I must have been traumatic for them but imagine collecting your child's body parts. No, I mean, It is severe in Gaza. It's not a genocide. That's not. I did several videos about other genocides that occurred, and I studied them very diligently. Not just the Holocaust, which is the genocide of my people, but also the Armenian genocide, which I made a video about when I was in Armenia, the Rwandan genocide, which I made a video about when I was in Rwanda. I still have to do Srebrenica, which was a one act of a massacre when I go to Bosnia, and also Cambodia. So I'm very, it's very important to me when real, actual genocides that happened in history to study them and to talk about them. But these are real genocides, not like the fake Gaza genocide. It's not a genocide. In Armenia, the Turks, they took 1.5 million people and marched them out into the desert to starve. They killed in 1 year, 2 years, 1.5 million people, 1.5 million. In Rwanda, they armed people with machetes and sent them out into the streets to massacre people. In less than a year, they killed 850,000 people. Some say 1 million. The Holocaust was 6 million, all right? And this is in premeditated, systematic massacre of civilians. Here, you have a war that's been going on 1.5 years. You have 50,000 people dead. Like I said, in the Armenian genocide, it was 1.5 million in the same time period. It's not exactly the same scale now, is it? And of course, out of the 50,000, 20,000 of them are fighters. Not to mention the fact that they're still holding our hostages, and they started the war by massacring people and taking hostages and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's starvation as a weapon. Nobody in Gaza starved. Nobody. By the way, that's the main accusation of genocide, right? Because the numbers clearly don't show a genocide, as horrific as the people who've died and suffered there is. And I'm not denying that people are suffering there badly, and I wouldn't want to be in their position at all, and we should feel very sorry for them, definitely. But that doesn't mean that it's a genocide, and it doesn't mean that they didn't start the war, because they did start the war. And it doesn't mean that they're starving, because nobody in Gaza has starved. There's not one case of one case of a person starving in Gaza, one. Not a single person in Gaza has starved. There's young people who died because they didn't have access to specified medicine, which is a different story. But nobody starved because they ran out of food and they died of malnutrition. It simply hasn't happened. Shaggy says war is not worth genocide. I agree. It's not. And, Warriors or Rockets game 7. Fenix says, I have a question. Genocide is about numbers. It's largely about numbers. Numbers and intent, yeah. Numbers and intent. Are you trying systematically to murder people? Right? Are you going house to house and putting bullets in people's heads? Are you herding them into gas chambers or into the desert? Are you chopping them up with machetes on purpose? That's what you're trying to do. These are some of the things that happened in the other genocides. It's not happening here. And then, yeah, of course, there's numbers. I mean, if you're fighting a war and you have, 50% of the people killed or 33% of the people killed are Hamas fighters, then that definitely shows that you're not trying to kill the civilians, because in most wars you have a higher civilian to combatant ratio of dead, So if Israel wanted to kill civilians in Gaza, if it was trying, then there would be 1 million dead in Gaza now. Easy. So either Israel is just an abject, pathetic failure at committing genocide, or there's no genocide. I think it's the second option. We have someone from Uganda. Hey, Uganda. The last place that I was before I came back to Israel. Then the 6 million death is not a genocide, dude? You're stupid? Why? Why'd you say that? The 6 million dead was a systematic murder of civilians. It wasn't happening there was no battle going on. It wasn't, they killed 6 million Jews and they killed 2 million Jewish fighters. Like, that's not what happened. They put them in the gas chambers, or they in Russia they put them in they tied them together and shot them in the head. That's systematic murder on a massive scale. That's not what's going on in Gaza. Prove me wrong. Hi, did you know I'm Egyptian, says Eunice. No, I didn't know. Replay said hi. Are you an expert in snatching an assault rifle from a terrorist and saving the Jewish people? No, I'm not an expert in that. So we have some Egyptians here. We have Yunis is cool, and we have Ayman Nagib from Egypt. The Masriin. Oh, Simon Shirzad is putting out the... My religion says that we can't trust the Israeli people. Why? Your religion says? Greetings from Bulgaria. Here in Uganda, we love Israel. Yeah, I mean, we have a good relationship with Uganda, which is funny because back in the day of Idi Amin, that wasn't the case. But yeah. Eunice says, I don't know why, but it is. Yeah, well. Alec is a liar. Will he go to hell? Paul. My mother said that. Okay, fine. Look, in Egypt, I know this. I was in Egypt, okay? I received a lot of responses to my video in Egypt. It's got like, that video has got, I mean, it's got over 1 million views and it's got like 20,000 comments. I read a lot of those comments, so. Yeah, I mean, that's in Egypt. They teach the people that, look, Israel is our enemy. Israel is trying to harm us and hurt us. And it's doing so to the Palestinians. That's kind of like what people learn in Egypt. And I think it's unfair. Like, I don't think Israelis have anything against Egypt, especially now, after the wars that we fought. That's like a long time in the past now. And, you know, there's two sides to the story with the Palestinians. And I wish people in Egypt would have a more balanced view about it. That's all I can say. But yeah, I understand that. Like, if you're in Egypt, and I saw the museum there, and also of the war. Like, it's the story of Israel always tried to attack Egypt, and Israel's always trying to harm Egypt, and Israel's trying to kill the Palestinians. And people grow up in Egypt with this kind of like belief system swirling around them, and they, you know, not. Don't like Israel very much in Egypt, most of the people. But yeah, even in Egypt, where they, you know, they grow up with these, like, Israel is like the enemy, a lot of people are very nice, and it's fine, like when I was there. So, like, there's always people are people, and like very often you have an interaction, and the interaction is fine, and the people are nice. And I found that in Egypt, that a lot of the people were nice. Even when I said I was from Israel, a lot of them were nice. I go to the principal. I don't know what that means with her. Okay, is there any Israeli Jew person who can tell me why the Ethiopian Jew people are discriminated against, even though they are the same with you? I don't know. I think the accusations of Ethiopians being discriminated in Israel are vastly exaggerated. Like the accusations of the discrimination against the Arabs are vastly exaggerated. I feel like when you live in a bubble where, you know, you're very much against Israel and you're all constantly looking for evidence to support your predisposition, which that Israel is, you know, racist. And then they come and they say, look, they do this to the Ethiopians, they do that. And it's like, I don't know, I don't see it. It was funny, again, I was like on Twitter, there's some Israeli activist, she's Ethiopian, right? Ethiopian Jewish. מה זה די די כפרה דבר עברית? Whatever, I don't know what's going on. Someone here is saying something in Hebrew. Anyway, so yeah, there was like an Ethiopian Jewish girl, and in Israel. And she's like on Twitter trying to like defend Israel against the accusations and whatnot. And there are people there telling her like, look, you live in an apartheid state. Do you know what they do to Ethiopian Jews in Israel? Do you know how they discriminate against you? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I lived my whole life here, and like my life is fine, and people are very nice to me, and I don't face any discrimination. It's like, no, you do. And then they share this post. There's the same story. There was a story back 15 years ago claiming that some Ethiopian woman was sterilized. And I don't remember exactly the details, and therefore the claim came out that all the Ethiopian women in Israel, the Jewish Ethiopians, are being sterilized because Israel is so racist towards Ethiopian. You know, it's like, and like they're literally telling the person who's living the experience, who's telling me I'm not facing persecution. Like the people on Twitter who've never been here, they're telling her, no, you're facing persecution. You're facing terrible persecution. I don't know. And I was with them in the military, in the Israeli military, with all the Ethiopian Jews, so many of them in my unit. And I don't know, like, are they facing this terrible persecution in Israel? I don't think so. What do you think about Eastern Orthodox Christianity? I don't know that much about Eastern Orthodox Christianity. I'm not a big expert in the different streams of Christianity, you know? I mean, I think you're talking, there's like that Greek Orthodox Church has like a presence here in Israel, and it's like the Maronite Church in Lebanon and all that. It's like a type of Orthodox Christianity, but I'm not an expert on it. Ethiopian or not belong to Israel. Why? They're Jews, and they have a deep connection to their Jewish identity. And they also faced all kinds of persecutions in Ethiopia, and that's like the part of the story of Israel. It's like we share something as Jews. We share a history. We share a culture. And people who face persecution for being Jewish, they get to come to Israel and to be part of our family, you know, including Ethiopian Jews. Sass says Jews are white. Why are you saying that? We have lots of brown Jews and black Jews. Maybe in Morocco, not so much, because the Moroccan Jews are a bit like brighter skinned, but some of those Sephardic, Mizrahi Jews, North African Jews are a lot darker in skin. You know, ones close to Morocco, like the Algerians, and some of the Moroccans as well, are darker skinned. They're not white. And it's also like funny, this whole thing, it keeps coming back to this race thing. Yeah, you guys are aware that Lebanese and Syrians are white, right? You do know that. Or not. Like, have you never seen a picture of Bashar al-Assad? Like, have you never seen a picture of Lebanese Hezbollah members? They're pale white, okay? Like this idea that like the Jews are white and the Arabs are brown is just, we got to get over this. It's just not true, you know? Like, yeah, some of the most Ashkenazi Jews are quite white. Yes, some of them, okay? Someone says, what color has to do? Yeah, it's all this stupid... Like, I'm telling you, when I was in Egypt and I started speaking Arabic, everybody thought I was from Syria or Lebanon. Everyone. Immediately. All the time. Like, also, when I walked in Jaffa, even, people start speaking to me in Arabic. They thought I was Arab. It's not easy to tell, okay, between Jews and Arabs. It's like a lot of it has to do with how you dress, how you walk. Like, there's not... it's not like a white and black skin thing. You can't... It's stupid. Really, really stupid. By your nose, we can tell. That's another funny thing. On the one hand, they call us white European. They say in the same. I was looking at one of my videos. Like one comment says you're a white European colonizer, and the next one says I can see your Jewish nose. So which one is it? I can't. If I have a Jewish nose, I have a Jewish nose, right? That's a Jewish characteristic, you're saying, but I'm also a European. So it's both? How is that possible? I don't know. This is just people Again, all this European colonizer, occupier, blah, 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 is just ways of denying Israel's existence and calling for Israel's destruction. Saying why destroying Israel is legitimate. Because Israel are colonizers, Israel are white Europeans, and they're killing indigenous people, so we want to destroy Israel. It's just an excuse. Someone says, I love Sabich. I also do. Any update about red heifer? My friend Tal, the traveling clad, did a video about the red heifers. It's like something they want to sacrifice on the Temple Mount. I don't know the story. You know Geert Wilders? Of course, yeah. He's like the head of the right-wing party in Netherlands. Hi, you beautiful human. Thank you. Angela Rogers says hi. Wait, how much battery do I have left on my phone? Because I am, I got 5%. All right, well, I guess we're just going to go until till the battery runs out. Do you Uganda? I don't know what that means. But I liked Uganda. That was my Africa trip. When I was in Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia. It was interesting. It was my first time like in Africa, not including like Egypt and Morocco. And it was cool. And there were like some Jewish communities and also in Uganda that I did a video about, which was cool. And they got like interesting mix there. I mean, they have Christians and Muslims and stuff, and people seem to be getting along. So it was nice. It was nice to be in Uganda. Don't talk about Morocco. Why? Will the new Pope call for a crusade to recapture Jerusalem? I don't think so. Are Arabs welcome to visit Israel? Look, yeah. Again, I think there's only an issue a bit with a bit of the issue like when you come to the airport, right? You come to the airport, you want to enter, then they might give you a hard time if you have like an Arab name, right? They'll be like, okay, well, why are you here? Are you planning on going to the West Bank? Yes. Okay, why? Like they'll question you. But like I said, like the issue is mostly the question is mostly what happens at the airport, like as far as the entrance, they can give you a hard time. Once you enter Israel, it's fine. And there's no problem being an Arab in Israel because 20% of Israel, 25% of Israel is Arab. So, like there are Arabs all over the place. Everything's written in Arabic. All the signs are written in Arabic. So it's like, you can go around screaming in Arabic and then nothing will happen to you. So yeah. It's okay to be an Arab in Israel. It's really fine. Well, I think we're going to start wrapping this up, even though we got ourselves a nice little crowd here. Oh, I also want to say something about, I talked about it in my last Now, how is it now? Is it okay? Still nothing? What the hell? Yeah, you got the sound? Okay. Maybe that's what happens when I connected the battery. So maybe that means we're coming to an end soon. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but I was just saying. So yeah, if anyone ever wants to visit Israel, then you can come vlog with me. I mean, I charge a certain price for it, obviously, because it takes up a lot of my time. But you know, it like depends on what you want to do. And like the idea is to get people to like become more interested in making their own videos, and also to kind of share like an authentic experience here. So no sound again? No sound? Okay. We can hear. We can hear. Okay, cool. And you good on sound? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so if you're ever coming to Israel, then you can take that into consideration. There's also another thing. I was going to write a post about it on my posts section on my YouTube, which is I'm really making a lot of progress on a project that I really wanted to do for a really long time, which is to write a book. And it's going along pretty well. I've got like 30, 40 pages written down about basically my trips mostly to like the enemy countries, quote, which is Egypt, Saudi Arabia, maybe Morocco, I don't know, Indonesia, Malaysia, and like what I learned from all of that, and the good and the bad, you know? So I'm writing that, and it's going to be super, super cool. It's going to involve a lot of some of the scenes that are actually in my vlogs, like the motorbike incident, like being kicked out and all that. And some scenes that are not in my vlogs because they weren't filmed, but they were super interesting and I really want to share them. So it's like a holistic, it's like a whole experience of what I went through. So if you're like really a fan of my work and you want to get like some of that behind the scenes kind of like what was going through my head and how I made the decisions that I made and why I went to the places that I went, and kind of like what I learned and all that, then this book will be great for you. So it will also be a way of supporting my work. Like I'm constantly looking for ways to, you know, make this financially possible to do everything I'm doing. So you can, you know, support me on Patreon. You can support me with the super chat. You can just like and subscribe and share all my videos. All of those are ways to support me. By the way, regarding the book, some of the chapters are going to be available soon on Patreon. I haven't been that active on Patreon lately, and I want you guys to keep coming to the Patreon. So there's going to be like never before seen content, which already is a lot of on Patreon, and also chapters of the book. So if you want to see like sneak peeks of the book, more content that's never been seen before, sneak peek content, then you go to my Patreon, and there are like different tiers there of what you can be a part of. And you can sign up and support me and get access to like exclusive stuff. So that's what's going on. Some of the stuff I'm working on, there's, if you come to Israel, you get to do the vlog with me. That's one project. There's the book that's in the works. I hope to get it out by the end of the year. If I can't get it with a publisher, then I'll just publish it on Amazon, which is easy. So I don't even need anyone to do that. I could do it by myself. But it would be better if I can get a publisher. Yeah. And of course, I'm back working in the news as well. So I'm doing a lot of stuff. There's going to be new videos also as well. So I just hope all you guys keep following me. I know I'm not putting out as many videos as I used to because I'm just like, I'm back in Israel. You know, when I'm not traveling, it's hard for me to put out as many videos. But there's going to be more videos like the one in Jerusalem, cool videos on interesting subjects. You know. It's there's a lot of interesting stuff that's gonna come. Somebody said, what's it called, the book? I don't know yet, but it's gonna be something like Visiting the Enemy, Story of an Israeli Blogger in the Arab and Muslim World. Probably that, maybe I'll change it. But like the main title will be like Visiting the Enemy. Not that I think any of these people are my enemies. I think everybody, I don't like using the term enemy, but it's kind of like true. Like we are enemies, you know? Yeah. The goal is to not be enemies, obviously. Can I buy it from Holland? Yeah, it's going to be like So the thing is, it's gonna go to if I get a publisher, then there's more. Then I can get it sold more like in proper bookstores. But it's not easy to like get a publisher for your book. Like there are tons of people who want to publish books. So what is possible now in the era of technology is if I don't find a publisher who looks at my book and is like, oh, I like that, I want to publish that, and then they like make sure to put your book in the bookstore and everything, you can just publish it on Amazon, and then you just order it from Amazon or download it to your Kindle. That's probably what's going to happen. That will also make the process faster because then once it's out, then boom, like very quickly you have a book, you know? But this is still like quite far away. So there's no, in the meanwhile, the content will keep coming. So we can stick with that. Dude, I can help you with my knowledge. Plus, I'm Iranian, says Simon Shirzad. Yeah, I mean, look, the Iran thing is a whole thing. The problem is I haven't been to Iran, and I want to write about the countries that I actually visited. Of course, I'd love to visit Iran, but I can't in the current situation. So it's a different story. Don't go to Iran. No, I'm not. Mira says, I have a lot of Israeli friends, but we met in Bethlehem or Ramallah. Okay. Okay. Come to Vienna, Austria. Saluki seems like a person who would go there. No, he wouldn't go to Iran. But he did, when he was in Iraq, there's like an area there where you can like cross into Iran that's kind of like empty, so it's just not patrolled. So he went there when he was in Iraq. I know about that, he told me. Do more videos with Bedouins. Yeah, I made that video back in the day with the Bedouins in Rat. Yeah. Come to Madagascar. Did you ever visit Ariel, West Bank? Yeah, I've been there before. I mean, not many times, but look, most places in Israel I've been at least once, especially because I worked in the news, so they send me all over the place, and I've blogged, and most places I've been, but that doesn't mean I know them well. Yeah, there's a difference between being in a place once or twice and knowing it well. So even Jerusalem, it's huge, and there's some places that I've been many times, and some places that I don't know at all. Yeah. He can't go to Iran and get jailed. Yeah, that's the problem. Wait, so if I do this now is a question. If I do this, does the sound go away? Because now I need to charge my phone. Does the sound go away now or not? Wait, let me just connect this. Because otherwise the phone is just gonna die. Wait, why is this not charging? Wait a second. Okay, so do you have sound now? Sound is fine? You have sound, okay. All right, thank you, Sass Pass. Good luck in Morocco, and I hope to go back to Morocco soon. All right? So, yeah. Come to Vienna. Why, you live in Vienna, Simon? You live in Vienna? Ein Kerem. Where's Ein Kerem? I forgot. Walk from Jericho to Jerusalem. I don't think so. You can be my guest in Vienna. Vienna is a cool city. When I was an exchange student in Graz in Austria, I visited Vienna several times. Love from Alexandria. Thank you. You know Saluki, he's so friendly and nice. Don't you want to visit Ramallah? Yeah, I met him like the first time a few months ago. Wait, when was this? Oh no, that was before. Before I met him last year, before I went to Saudi Arabia. And now that I've come back to Haifa, where did I see him Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah, we met a couple times. Yeah, like I know him now. I didn't know him before. I'd only like knew him through YouTube. Now we've met a few times. As far as going to Ramallah, I mean, yeah, I guess I could go. I mean, I still have my concerns about going to a place like Ramallah in the current climate. But and I mean, I know also like I don't know if I could say everything I want to say there. But yeah, I mean, definitely be cool. I've been to Ramallah before. I haven't been into the really nice like part of Ramallah, but I did report from Ramallah once when I was working as a reporter. I did go to El Bire where there's is it El Bire? I wasn't in the place where the stadium is. I went to like a football match there. There was a Palestine versus Iraq football match. I've been to Bethlehem before. So I've been a bit, you know, in the Palestinian areas, but not that much. Replay says I wouldn't go to Ramallah, but that's me. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? There's, and especially, like, I've done YouTube for a while and I've done some edgy stuff. I wouldn't say I'm the most crazy YouTuber, because people do the craziest shit on YouTube. Like, but I did roll the dice a few times and took some risks in my YouTubing career. And, you know, and that's cool. And I think I did some amazing content. And now I'm kind of ready to chill and not do as crazy stuff anymore, you know? So like just going into Ramallah with the camera and filming seems to be a good way to get into trouble. I know some people do it. I know Saluki does it, but like that doesn't mean that that's what I want to do. I don't know. We'll see. I never say never. You know Tal, we had a video call. That's cool. Don't worry, every single one has its own problems. Nobody will think about hurting you. Like, what's the point? Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's always the thing in general, like about the world, right? Like every country, you hear the bad stuff about the country or the place or whatever, or the risks. And in the end of the day, like there's just a bunch of people going around doing their own thing. Like that's what happens often, you know? So same us, same them. So the Palestinians, you know, you go, they're busy doing their own thing and they don't care about you. And the same thing if you come to Israel, if you're Arab or Muslim or Palestinian, then people are just minding their own business often, you know? That's kind of, yeah, it's true. Well, we've been doing this for like 2.5 hours. So it's a shame to get off when we have a decent sized audience here. We have 66 people live right now. And have had like 75 and stuff throughout most of the chat. And chat's been active. So I'm happy that we had a big, nice live stream. I assume there's going to be more of that now that I'm back in Israel, which is kind of like the location that a lot of people are interested in with the whole Israel-Palestinian thing. So yeah, I mean, I assume we're going to have some big live streams in the future. So thank you for joining in, you guys. I hope I answered most of the questions. I got a lot of questions. You know, some of them I answered in depth, some short. So yeah, you know, I try my best. I can't answer all the questions. There's a lot here. And also, yeah, I mean, I do hope you guys keep following the channel. I know it's been like a month since I posted, until I posted that Jerusalem video, but I'm still active and I'm still making content. So don't worry about that. And yeah, if you guys can support me on the Patreon or in the Super Chat or Super Thanks or the merchandise store, all that, you can see it all on my YouTube page, all the stuff that I have. And that'd be great and really help motivate me to keep making content for you guys. So thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you in the next live stream, maybe next week. All right. Yalla. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.